Do you really need a cinema camera for your video project? Do you? Hey guys, okay, today we're going to talk about something that's been the subject of hot debate throughout the ages. The medieval times, dragons flying over, down here on the ground, there's people arguing about whether or not you really need a cinema camera for your video project. In the world of video production, choosing your equipment is extremely important. It can greatly impact the outcome of your project. One common question is, do we really need a cinema camera? Now, cinema cameras are known for their exceptional image quality, for cinematic capabilities, and for the features. But cinema cameras and their operators do come with a heftier price tag. So let's explore the factors to consider when making a decision. First, let's understand what a cinema camera does and what it is. Cinema cameras tend to have larger sensors, which means they have better depth of field, and typically they perform better in low light. Now, if we're talking about a Sony a7S III or an FX3, that's a little different, even though the FX3, whatever. High dynamic range. This is a key difference between a cinema camera and a DSLR or a mirrorless because those cameras have a more narrow dynamic range, which means you have limitations when it comes to exposing your image and you're going to get a more contrasty shot. Now, maybe you want that, but oftentimes you want to be in control of how much contrast there is in your footage. Cinema cameras offer more headroom when it comes to your range of exposure. Interchangeable lenses. Well, this is, mirrorless and DSLRs have interchangeable lenses as well, but it's worth mentioning. RAW recording. Some DSLR and mirrorless can record RAW, not all of them, but almost every cinema camera can. And RAW is the subject of a little bit of debate of how necessary it is, but at the highest levels of cinema, we're talking Hollywood or Netflix, you're gonna wanna record in RAW because you're gonna want the most flexibility you can get in post-production. Professional color profiles. This is a little bit less of a debatable thing. The color profiles that are in cinema cameras just look better. Now, you can do some tweaking with your mirrorless or your DSLR to get close, but you're not gonna get an ARRI image out of a Canon Rebel. Higher bit rates. This is something that mystifies people. It's pretty simple though. Just think about it as the same thing as resolution, even though it isn't. Each bit is a part of a pixel that contains data. The more data that's in each bit, the more detail that you're going to be capturing and the more accurate color that you're going to capture. So let's talk some factors to consider when making your decision. Project requirements. Consider the nature of your project. Are you shooting a Hollywood movie? Are you shooting a Netflix special? Then you probably want to go with a cinema camera. However, if you're shooting a corporate interview or a vlog or maybe some social content, it might not be necessary. Budget. This is a little bit cut and dry. I mean, if you got a crazy budget and you can afford it, why not go for it? And if your budget doesn't account for it, then you can't. But again, if the camera's not necessary, then why blow that portion of the budget on something that's not necessary? You can hire a colorist. You can hire a gaffer. I don't know. Whatever you want. An effects makeup artist. Something. Skill level. Now, can you operate a cinema camera? Can your camera operator operate a cinema camera? Maybe their specialty is a DSLR. And in that case, if you're dedicated to a particular camera operator or if you're going to do it, you should probably work with whatever your specialty is. Portability. Well, cinema cameras are not portable. I have an FX6. It lives in a huge Pelican that's very heavy, and it's got a lot of crap. A DSLR, you can carry it in this, with 3 or 4 lenses. So that's a factor. Post-production resources. This is something that some people don't necessarily think about until it's too late, but can your editing rig handle editing footage that comes out of a cinema camera? It's larger footage, it's different, it's higher quality, and you're gonna need decent processing power to effectively work with that footage. Alternative equipment. Like I've been saying, there's a lot of DSLRs, particularly the mirrorless Sony a7S III and arguably the Sony FX3, which is marketed as a cinema camera, but they have impressive capabilities. They're really good. So you may want to consider one. Okay, lastly, let's look at some alternatives when it comes to cinema cameras. DSLRs and mirrorless. Like I said, a camera like a Sony a7S III or an FX3 is entirely adequate for 80% of video projects. I mean that. They're great cameras. They have impressive capabilities. They have amazing color profiles. They perform really well in low light. They have interchangeable lenses. There are some features missing there, but these are great choices. Prosumer camcorders. Now these are going to give you high quality footage with less options. Most of the time they have lenses that are attached. So, you know, if you want really high quality glass, that's not an option for you. But if you have a project, or maybe you're shooting like a show or something, like, I mean, Always Sunny was shot on prosumer camcorders for the first season. Now it looks terrible in the first season, so maybe that's not a great example, but these cameras will get the job done. Smartphones, yay. Okay, let's talk about smartphones, because if you're shooting social content, you should be shooting on a smartphone. And there is a period at the end of that sentence. I have nothing more to say to you. The smartphone is an amazing camera. It's an amazing underrated camera. And the stabilization and 4K in a modern iPhone is unbelievable. I'm gonna show you in this video footage that I've shot handheld on an iPhone 13 Pro 2 years ago. It looks great, doesn't it? Can you see it right now? Am I showing it now? Is it up in the, is it in the cloud? Where is it? Action cameras like a GoPro. These are good options. Very, very good options. Imagine you're shooting a scene where someone's driving in a car. Do you know the rigging you need to hook up a cinema camera to a car and have it be stable and look good? Not to mention the filters, the time of day. It's a nightmare. If you can swing it, stick a GoPro on there. Good to go. Drone cameras. Now, you can hook up a cinema camera to a drone. You can. But that's a big drone. That's a very big drone, and you're gonna spend a pretty penny on that operator and that drone, for sure. But if your project doesn't necessarily have Hollywood level needs, use a Mavic Pro, rent it. Have somebody come out for a couple $100 for an hour, get the aerial shots you need. Done deal. Okay, in conclusion, I'm sorry this may be a little bit anticlimactic, but the necessity for a cinema camera really does depend on the project requirements. That said, I'll give you some personal thoughts on the subject. I'd say if you got one, use it. There you go. If you don't have one, shoot anyway. Shoot with what you've got. I know this is a thing that photographers and cinematographers say all the time, but shoot with whatever you've got. You know your equipment best. You know the ins and outs of it. You know how to squeeze the best quality image out of your camera. So use what you have. Now, if you get thrown into a situation where all of a sudden you're shooting something for Hollywood and you need a Netflix-approved camera, go for the cinema camera. If you want advice on a camera to buy, if you're taking video seriously and you've already got money coming in and you're busy and you're working, you may want to spring for the cinema camera. It makes you look more professional. It's got features. It's going to make your life easier. That is for sure. However, if you're getting by just fine on an S3, shoot with the S3. There's no pressure. If there's no driving necessity or need to switch cameras, I say don't. That's it. The decision to use a cinema camera does depend on your project requirements when it comes to video production. And speaking of video production, if you need video production in Las Vegas and you don't know where to go, you can always visit OneTrackMind.com. That is on3trackmind.com, and I'll be there to answer all your questions. I'm Rob McGovern from One Track Mind. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.